I've played tons of bad games and I've collected plenty of games, so much that I've kind of forgotten what was on the shelf behind me. There's years of preservation, memories in a time where life was just a little bit easier to live, and I love that. But to be fair, not all the games on the shelf behind me are good. Some are, to put it lightly, microwave dog shit. And while I did an episode previously talking about games that I was proud to own, the same Epic community member, Lucrative Soundset, suggested in that same comment that I talk about bad games that I'm proud to own as well. This also was a community voted episode, so thanks to all the firefighters that voted to make this episode happen. So that's the topic of today's episode, 10 bad games that I'm proud to own. Let's begin. It takes a lot of time and patience to complete a library. I had already done it with the Action Max, and I was setting my sights on the next library to complete, and for me, that was the Milton Bradley Microvision, a very early handheld video game console. I actually played all of these on an emulator live on stream because I do own 2 Microvisions, and neither of them work. At least one makes noise, but even that doesn't last long. But to be honest, it was doomed to fail anyway. The last game I collected though was Connect 4, and yeah, it's not good. In fact, none of the games are worth your time, but it's still so cool to have a tiny piece of video game history in your possession. At some point, I'll make a video talking about the Microvision in the same format as the Action Max, so look forward to that. When I hear of Delphine software, I instinctively grip my controller and relax my asshole, because I know with 100% certainty that the game I'm about to play is gonna peg me raw. For anyone who doesn't know, Delphine made tons of cinematic platformers. The one most people know of is Out of This World, or Another World if you were outside the United States, maybe even Flashback. Boring, stupid fucking walking simulators that punish you for breathing chock to the brim with trial and error. The one franchise they did well was Moto Racer, but the game that came out before Moto Racer was one of the most ridiculous games I have ever had the privilege of playing, Shak Fu. Now, it wasn't unheard of to have popular athletes of the era doing silly things. Michael Jordan was in MJ Chaos in the Windy City, that's a great example, but Shaq was just as big of a deal. And in his game, as the title implies, he's fighting bad people. And the thing is, I kind of actually like it. I don't expect much from Shaquille O'Neal fighting people one-on-one, and it's stupid, but it's fun. Plus, the Genesis version, should you decide to buy it, has 5 more playable characters and 3 more stages, which is always nice. I love 1942, I have always loved 1942, and I could make an entire episode talking about how much I fucking love 1942 and why it's so important to me. But it always boils down to one thing. It was one of the first games I ever played with my dad, and for some reason that influenced me tremendously. Now, I did want to create a series known as Fortefyre, and I still am. There's actually one for Ninja Gaiden coming out soonish, but I have to get to it first. Now, when I was first drafting the idea of Fortefyre, I wanted to pilot it with 1942, so I went out and I tried to get all of these different copies of 1942, and the one that I'm oddly proud of is the Commodore 64 version, which is probably one of the more worst versions of it, but for whatever reason, it has a bopping soundtrack. Chalk it up to the era of the Commodore 64. Growing up, there was one superhero from DC I ever cared about, and it was Batman. My stupid ass decided at some point in the early 2000s to spend my money on a Batman Beyond game for the Nintendo 64. And guess what? It wasn't good. Now, you would think, Fort, this is a teachable life lesson. Maybe look up the reviews of the game you're buying on this fancy new thing called the internet, and don't buy games that are shit. Well, unfortunately, as a child of the ADHD generation, I 100% ignored all of these red flags and rented Batman Vengeance, which is one of the worst PS2 games I have ever played. And guess what? My grandmother remembered me playing it, And then she bought it for me for Christmas. So for the longest time, I had a biblical amount of hatred for the Batman franchise as it was related to video game adaptations. But my rules of release, they exist for a reason. And the first game in the Batman era was an MSX isometric game. Now I know it's on the MSX, but in reality, it's really just a port of the ZX Spectrum game. So you walk around like a frumpy idiot jingling with every step to a color palette that screams a toddler colored this game, but I was happy to own a Japanese computer. The MSX was not a mistake. There are wonderful games on it, but this was the first game that I bought. The CDI is oftentimes considered one of the worst video game consoles ever created, and for good reason. The controller is stupid, the games are horrible, and from the ground up, it should have never existed. But to me, as a collector and video game preservationist, there's one very specific reason why I avoid playing CDI games. And some of you might not know this, but the CDI is a ticking time bomb. The fourth generation was dominated by consoles you could simply plug and play. Think the Super Nintendo, the Neo Geo, the TurboGrafx 16, the Genesis, the Works, even the Genesis add-ons were simply plug and play. The reason they managed to keep that working is because they didn't have an inherent need to save data, because the games that needed it either had a password or a battery-backed SRAM built into the cartridge. But the CDI was a disc-based medium. There was no ability to use a memory card or to have a battery on the disc, so what did they do? They put a timekeeper chip on the board. It's a combo RTC, or real-time clock, and a NVRAM unit with a tiny 2032 battery inside of it. It's a socketed chip. You probably have them on more products than you realize. Seems pretty advanced, right? Well, yeah, you can take pride in knowing you have one of the more advanced systems out there all the way until the battery fucking dies. And now you have a bricked CDI that will not boot the BIOS because the timekeeper is not powered. Congratulations, you now own a $500 paperweight. I know I went a little bit longer explaining than I would for other games on this list, but I don't really talk about the CDI that often. And I wanted to check out the Zelda CDI games because fuck it, why not? Now the retail demo that I have is the normal game. It's basically a not for resale, but it is the whole game, and it's significantly cheaper. Happy to own it. Fucking sucks. I'm happy to own it. The 3DO is a console that many people don't like, and I don't blame you. I have a very strong love-hate relationship with the console, I get it. It's one of those finicky collection markets where people are really trying to get their money back. But for all the bad games the 3DO had, there were a few that I loved. Zadnos, The People's Party, Road Rash, and my personal favorite, Emercenary. Emercenary is a dope-ass game. We basically go into this MMO FPS. Yeah, imagine that genre mishmash. A massively online first-person shooter. And it's our job to kill other players and absorb their static, which boosts 3 different aspects of our character: defense, offense, and agility, known as DOA, if you care to check it out. Again, as with most of the games on this list, it's a very rough game and it carries a very rough learning curve. So if you want to play this, you're gonna have to dedicate some time to it. This one might be divisive. Some people love Shinmu. For many, it was groundbreaking. A pioneer in the life sim genre where progression meant walking around town, gathering scraps of information, waiting for time to pass, and physically moving through mundane routines to slowly creep the story forward. It was immersive, realistic, in some ways kind of therapeutic. But if you're like me, it felt more like playing a game about someone with undiagnosed Asperger's, right? Obsessively fixated on small tasks, struggling with social nuance, locked into routines, and driven by a narrow, unwavering goal. The charm for many people was the deep immersion. For others, it was kind of like being stuck inside a socially awkward time loop where you're not sure if you're solving a mystery or just really committed to racing a forklift. Personally, I think Shinmu 2 is better, and again, that might be a hot take, but I do own the Japanese version of it. The special version I have actually was given to me by a good friend, Aldrich Japan, a former streamer who moved to Japan. It was a neat gift. Basically, US Shinmu was created for Japanese people who really wanted the game to be in English, no more no less. Growing up, I was really big into games where you were a doctor. I wasn't smart enough, at least I didn't believe that I was, to become a doctor, so the next greatest thing was playing games with a theme, and way back in the early 2000s, Legacy Software released quite a few games that aligned with modern medical practices. You could go through over 400 different unique cases in the first game alone, and the one that I loved was Code Blue Critical Condition, which specialized in trauma cases. At some point, likely when I packed up for my first attempt at college, I packed up all of my PC games, and that was the last time I saw them. I don't know where they went, I don't know where my dad moved my stuff, and for all I know, it was lost in the flood or thrown away. So when I walked into a game store in Gatlinburg, Tennessee or Pigeon Forge, one of those two, I found this complete in box, and I really wanted to have it because it was one of the games that I missed. Now the game isn't fun, it's very boring, cut and paste medical ethics 101, and that might not be for everyone, but I am proud to own it. So many people hate this game. I love this game, and I think it's because I loved Ease, because if I hadn't played Ease, I would loathe Highlight. It's a very different game, you know? You can't approach it like you would 99.9999999% of the other video games out there, right? Now, Highlight isn't special, nor is it good. The music loop is one of the chief complaints. It's a non-stop 16-second loop of something that very well could be ripped off from Indiana Jones, and unless you read the manual, you were literally just running into people and dying. And because of that, most people just say, fuck this, and just don't play it. Well, I love it. I know it's a very unpopular opinion, but I do actually enjoy this game, and it was one of the early games that I collected when I actually started giving a damn. I do challenge you to beat it though. Turn down the music, grab a beer, open up the strategy wiki, and give this one a shake. You might actually like it. Or play Ease first. That could change your mind as well. You know, a lot of people don't like Myst, and I get it, not everybody will, but I do. And I have played every single comprehensible version of this game, but the Saturn version was the first one that I played. Now in Myst, we play as the Stranger, and we don't have a name. We never have a name, nor do we have a name in any of the future games. We touch a Myst linking book and we go through the ages to eventually find our way to Atris on Dunny, where he says, "Gee, thanks. Probably gonna need your help again though." Thus setting us up for Riven, and I did leave out some stuff, but I'm just doing that in the off chance that you want to try Myst for yourself. Now Myst, the original iteration, it's very much a point and click game. Some people might refer to it as a PowerPoint simulator, and you know what? I could see that. But at least you have a mouse on the PC version. On the Saturn version, I had a controller. But in the end, I didn't mind it. Because of that, this is a very special game to me. And that's it for today's episode. What did you think of this list? Are there any bad games that you are proud to own? Feel free to share it in the comment section below. Who knows, maybe you'll discover your own new favorite bad game. Speaking of our community, if you made it to the end of this episode, you're already home with us. We are a gathering of video game enthusiasts that love to remember when life was just a little bit easier to live. And if you align with that, you'll fit right in. Finally, the single most important thing you can do for me is hit that thumbs up button, as it directly impacts the visibility of the videos and the projects that I work on every single day. As always, from my family to your family, good energy, good vibes. Fortefyre out.